Welcome back to News Talk. So good to have you here this time. We'll talk real estate later in the hour, but right now, let's get back to our conversation with and your phone calls for Tom Threlkeld, Editor-in-Chief of the DC Pro Sports Report. Phone lines open for those of you watching in the 11 o'clock hour, 11:30 as we reopen the second half hour of the program today. 703-387-1020, our number here, talking all things sports, and would love to work your questions and comments into the mix. Let's talk about what the impact of Dallas's win, the surprise win by the Cowboys over Washington at home at FedEx last night. Here's what it does to the NFC East. 3 teams now tied at 5 up, 7 down. Dallas back in the mix after being left for dead at 4 and 8.
Amazing.
Romo's not going to play this year again,
no,
right?
I mean theoretically he might play if they made the playoffs and won a playoff a game or two, but he's not going to play a game. We won't see him.
So who's in the driver's seat now? Anybody?
Yeah, that's interesting. I went back and forth with a local columnist on Twitter who suggested that he thought Philadelphia was in the driver's seat
because of their schedule and their
right.
They have
but
a lot of home games.
I said don't count out the Giants because they're the only team in that division that really has a heart of a champion. The one and Tom Coughlin and company are usually at their toughest when their backs are against the wall and people are sniping at them as they are after their disappointing loss to the Jets on Sunday. Yeah, it's bad. This is a very bad loss for Washington. And it's not just that it drops them back into the standings when they could have taken control of the division. Mm-hmm. It's what it says about the team. Their remaining games, they're in Chicago against the Bears, they're home against Buffalo, and then they have to go on the road to finish out the season against Philadelphia and Dallas. And if they couldn't beat the Cowboys in FedEx Field, where's their next win coming from? I mean, you can look at that schedule and very conceivably see loss out. And they finish a dismal 5-11. That's only 1 game better than last season, and that might bring on a coaching change, I would think. And that could very well happen. Now we don't know. The Skins bounce back and go back and forth from week to week. But what we do know is 3 of their 4 remaining games are on the road, and they haven't won on the road yet. They haven't beaten anybody. They're going to have to, and it has to start in Chicago. Chicago is a must-win for Washington because then they'd have to win out. They'd have to win their next 3 games. And that game against Buffalo, which is their only home game left, is going to be a tough game. The Buffalo has a solid defense. Tyrod Taylor, who many people around this area are familiar with from his years in college at West Virginia, is a terrific quarterback. He's having a great season. Could really cause Washington a lot of trouble. They need to beat Chicago.
Buffalo has the sort of toughness that I wish Washington had.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an intangible, but parts aside, talent, the roster aside, there's something about the style of play. Yeah. I mean, Buffalo's not a great team, but there's an intensity level there that I think would help this team.
That's right. I think it's bleeding out from their coach. Rex Ryan is, he has a very bombastic personality, but he's more of a risk taker. He took a huge risk at the start of the season when he passed over guys like Matt Castle, established veterans, and gave the quarterback job to Tyrod Taylor, and it's really paid off. The Bills are a pretty good team with Taylor in there. And that's what Washington needs. Jay Gruden should think of himself as coaching for his job right now. And he should be looking at this like, I've got to take the reins off of Kirk Cousins. He's the only part of the offense that's working right now, and they better get him working. They better let him play football.
Not inconceivable that we'll have 3 new coaches in the NFC East next year.
That is entirely possible. That's right. There's been rumblings in Philadelphia with Chip Kelly and, of course, Tom Coughlin. There are people in New York who think Tom Coughlin has stayed too long, even though he's won 2 Super Bowls for them. So, yeah, it can happen. I think Jason Garrett is safe in Dallas.
And probably Jay Gruden is safe.
Yeah.
Barring collapse.
Yeah, if they collapse, I think Gruden could be in trouble. We have to remember that the owner has a itchy trigger finger, and the general manager, Scott McLuhan, did not hire Jay Gruden. He's inherited him. So he has no ties to Gruden and probably wouldn't have hired him if the choice had been his.
I want to combine 2 topics into one here. This has been a crazy year in the NFL, and this weekend, I think, exhibited that or illustrated, underscored that point. Although it is not a 1-week phenomenon, this has been a strange year. And the officiating has been an issue, too. I guess it's really 2 separate issues. Going to the first topic of what an unusual year this has been in the NFL with so many mediocre teams, is the limitation on contact in practices affecting the play on the field? And is that why everyone seems to be 5-6 or close to it?
That's right. It's definitely affecting some teams. I think, but we see other teams, it doesn't seem to bother them. And a team like Carolina, which has done so well based on its defense, or the Patriots, which until recently, until all these injuries they've suffered on offense, have really shown huge improvements on defense. I think the lack of contact is having an impact. On the other hand, I understand why the players wanted it. I mean, the game is brutal enough as it is. To have the brutality of the game bleeding over into the rest of the week is very tough, and it's taking a toll on their quality of life, the length of their career, and their lifespans. The fact is, the best organizations, the best coaching staffs will find ways to adjust to this and overcome it, and the other ones won't. And look, the NFL recycles a lot of coaches. There's a lot of guys in there who have jobs just because they've been having jobs in the NFL for many, many years. It's one of the reasons why minorities have found it so difficult to break in. It's not just institutional bigotry. It's also people hiring guys they know.
Like Gene Mauch, he never won, but he was never unemployed.
That's right.
A very dated reference.
That's right. No, but I get it. And I think that's part of the problem. There's a lot of average coaches. You swap this guy out and put that guy in, and it wouldn't really make a difference. The elite franchises, the ones that seem to be good year after year, are the ones that can respond to new circumstances like the rules changes that they've made for very good reasons, in my opinion.
Do you think there's going to be some sort of reassessment of officiating after the season? I mean, I think some of the issue is, I apologize for not letting you answer, but some of the rules have. They keep changing the rules, and now we don't know, for example, what a catch.
Nobody knows what a catch is. This is my big issue.
But is there a broader problem?
Yeah, look, well, they don't. The officials aren't full-time employees the way they are in the NBA or Major League Baseball.
But they never have been.
They never have been. Maybe it's time they should be. The players keep getting bigger and faster and stronger. The rules keep getting more complex. They could also expand instant replay. Some people this fills with dread because it slows down the game. Other people like Coach Bill Belichick of the Patriots believe it's more important to get things right and that the officials need more help. The NFL is insanely rich. They could pay these guys full-time salaries and make them full-time employees and say, look, we know many of you are lawyers and doctors and business owners, but if you want to officiate games in the NFL, we need to be studying the rules and working on this full-time. My guess is that would be the place to start, but they could also define what a catch is.
Talk about that briefly, if you would, because that's driving people mad.
Yeah, it happens all the time. We've seen it in the game with Green Bay last year, and of course, most famously with Des Bryant last year in the playoffs, and Dallas fans will never forget it. And Calvin Johnson with the Detroit Lions. Nobody knows when a ball is when you have it under control and when you hit the ground and the ball pops out, did you have it under control long enough? The rule is amorphous. I don't really blame officials for getting it wrong. The problem is they're ruling one thing a catch in one game, and when it looks just the same in another game, a different group of officials is giving it a different ruling. And so literally we don't know what a catch is in the NFL, and since the passing game is the biggest part of the game in the NFL, that's a major problem, and it's led to embarrassing gaffes, including in last year's playoffs.
As a local and as a Maryland person, what do you make of the decision of the president of the University of Maryland to potentially rename Byrd Stadium?
I think this sort of thing was inevitable. Our society is changing, and Byrd, while he made laudable contributions to the university, expanding it and making it a better place in many ways, he was a segregationist. And while some people say, and he kept African Americans out of the university, out of College Park until 1951, when he was forced to admit them by a court order. A lot of people say, oh, we're whitewashing history, and we shouldn't judge him by the standards of today. But we can judge him by the standards of that day. And the fact is, there were plenty of people in the 1950s who knew that segregation was wrong. I mean, there was a civil rights movement then. 3 years after 1951, we had Brown versus Board of Education. So I think, and he ran in 1954 for governor as a strict segregationist. I don't have a problem with changing the name. I think the name should be changed. And let's face it, it's not sacred. They've already slapped a corporate name on that stadium as well. So, but I think this sort of thing is going to be happening more and more as America's changing. Our ethnic makeup is changing, and this is something that older white people, frankly, are going to have to get used to and accept, whether they like it or not.
Briefly, we can't wrap up without talking about the passing just a couple days ago of someone I listened to a lot in my youth, and I believe that you listened to a lot in your youth.
Sure did.
Ken Beatrice, back when WMAL radio was a much different station.
Yes.
Ken Beatrice was the sports host in the evening. He was a legendary figure. This is before the internet for the most part.
Right.
So the things that he had an encyclopedic knowledge and a good nature. You know, he wasn't one of these annoying or hard-edged people.
Right.
And a lot of times you heard things from him because of his knowledge or apparent knowledge of a range of different sports that if you didn't hear from him, you probably weren't hearing about it.
That's right. Ken Beatrice for sports geeks was required listening. After a Washington football game, I turned him on and listened to him. Some people thought he was too geeky, but he really anticipated what we now see in the sports world with people more focused on stats and the draft and things like that. But he did move out of his time because he was very earnest and very polite when children called. Children wouldn't call a lot of these sports shows on radio today because he'd be mocked if they asked simple questions. He was very earnest, very kind, and of course known for wonderful catchphrases like, "You're next here on Sports Call, hello!" And of course his hilarious advertisements for Arby's fast food, where he would tell people, "I love the Jamocha shake, it's thick and rich. I never touched the curly fries, but I'm told they're very good."
And can you imagine someone today taking calls off the air for the people who didn't get through on the air?
He would talk for hours to anyone who wanted to call. He loved sports, and he loved talking to people about sports. Ken Beatrice was a big part of the soundtrack of me growing up, and one of the reasons I love sports and love Washington sports. And I've missed him ever since he went off the air.
Great tribute to a great broadcaster and a presence in this market.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tom Threlkeld, Editor-in-Chief of the DC Pro Sports Report. Good to see you as always. Have a
My pleasure.
Great week. We're back with more right after this.